Welcome to Circulating Love. So excited to be here to chat about things. Don't know what we're chatting about yet. What are we chatting about?
Yes. So today we are going to talk about the difference between hurt and harm.
Oh, mm,
And
mm.
you're going to start.
I'm gonna start.
Yes.
I love that. Okay. All right. So hurt and harm. I can feel how, like, hurt is so subjective.
Mm,
And the way I talk about it, and so when I do like my conflict trainings, I always say, like, here's my definitions. And like my definitions change all the time. And you don't have to necessarily agree with my definitions, but it's like important for you to understand how I'm coming at things when I talk about things. Because
mhm,
like we throw these words out all the time and it's like abuse and hurt and harm and conflict and like all these, like, what is it, right?
mhm.
And so I can feel hurt by something. I could feel harmed by something. And this is where, it gets a little complicated. It's like, did you cause harm? That is very subjective, right? And then when it jumps into like abuse, was it like abusive? I think it's different. And I know some people will say harm and hurt are also very separate, but I think that harm is very subjective too, because I can feel harmed by lots of things. And that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody harmed me, like in the way that we talk about harm, someone's bad because they harmed me, but I can feel harmed. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'll pause there. I'll say that's like my initial thought about hurt and harm.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure what you were going to say, and
Uh-huh.
I see different takes on this.
Mhm.
Like I've read different takes on this and all of that, right? Hurt, harm, abuse. Um, and it's interesting. I also feel like a gray when it comes to the term harm, because I can think of a situation where, like, I had a friend take care of my cat while I was away. I asked them to remove something from the house that was going, like, if it had stayed there, it would have made me very sick. They didn't do that. I personally felt very harmed because I came home and I got very ill and I dealt with all these
Mhm.
consequences in my body. Um, but I wouldn't say that they harmed me.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, that was just the thought that came to mind for me with that. I felt hurt, but I also definitely felt harmed. It's interesting how, and I can think of times where I felt hurt by somebody's actions,
Hmm.
um, but I wouldn't have said I felt harmed.
Yeah. It makes me think. I'm looking up like definitions right now because like definitions and Merriam-Webster or whatever feel important. But
Hmm.
I'm thinking about like when people talk about like trigger warnings, and I don't give trigger warnings, right? Because I don't know what's gonna trigger you.
Hmm.
And like you could be telling me a happy story about your mom, and I feel triggered because like my mom is an abusive, manipulative person, right?
Hmm.
And so the same as, talking about stories of harm. And I mean, we're gonna get descriptive with something, sure, but like you might want consent. I asked for consent to share like really intense stories, like, um, but I don't give trigger warnings because I don't know what's gonna trigger people, right? And so Merriam-Webster says harm is physical or mental damage, injury, right?
Hmm.
And that hurt is to inflict with physical pain. And I think a lot of the reason why people
Hmm.
want to run away from the word harm is because society has said if you harm someone, you're bad.
Hmm.
And like, I know I have harmed people. Not like, haha, I'm a harmer, but like, I know that whether it was like a mistake, an accident, I forgot to pick someone up, like whatever it was, I know I have harmed people. And I need to be able to acknowledge that in order to be accountable and change my behavior, you know?
Mhm.
And and then I think, and you didn't ask about this word, but I keep saying it, and I think like the difference is like abuse is like, a lot of the times it's like purposeful, or maybe it's not purposeful, but it's repetitive.
Mhm.
I think those are things. It's either like either and like
Mhm.
purposeful or repetitive, because it
Mhm.
doesn't matter if someone is unwilling or unable. I always say like they're either unwilling or unable to do this thing. At the end of the day, at some point can become, an abusive cycle. So yeah, I feel like if we let go of the that black and white thinking, the good bad of like when someone harms, they're a bad person, then
Mhm.
we can feel more comfortable in saying like I'm hurt, or you harmed me, or you hurt me, or I feel harmed, or I feel hurt. This action made me feel hurt, made me feel
Mhm.
harmed. I think that's an important thing. Like this action you did, I felt this way, versus you made me feel this way. You did this thing.
I'm thinking all about like the couples work that I do and the I statements versus the you statements, and
Yeah.
yeah, just how we like trigger such defensiveness when we're like, you did this thing.
Yeah.
Um, I want to talk more about the how yeah the good, bad, that black and white about people and their behaviors. But I want to circle back first to the definition. You said hurt is defined as physical.
Well, so I mean, it says to inflict with physical pain, to do substantial or material harm, to cause emotional pain or anguish,
Okay.
to be detrimental to. So there's like,
Okay.
it's a transitive verb.
We love trans verbs, I guess.
We do, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, when I think about like that situation that I was talking about, I dealt with like weeks of medical issues
Yeah.
afterwards that affected my ability to work. Like I absolutely feel like I felt harmed.
Hmm.
I know that it wasn't intentional on this person's part.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's never crossed my mind that it was abusive. But um, but absolutely, like I was harmed. It was
Hmm.
really, really painful. Um, and thus, I don't think that this person is, I don't know. So now we get into talking about the good and the bad, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not, doesn't lead me to think like this is a person is a bad person. It might lead me to be like, I don't know if I'm going to let you take care of my cat again while I'm away because that didn't go well. So maybe we need to talk about that. But, doesn't mean like you're a bad person.
Hmm.
I've certainly also, I remember the first time we had a conversation before we started recording our talks, and you acknowledged the same thing you did today, which was like, I've harmed people. Um, and I remember like when you said that, I like felt that in my body where I was like,
Mm.
wow, that is like brave to say, like I've harmed people, because I feel like there's that word in particular, it just carries so much weight. And as someone who like would never want to even hurt someone, as someone who would never want to cause harm, I also know that my actions have been harmful to people. And um, it carries, for me, and I think for a lot of people, it carries like so much shame to even like look back on some of these memories or these behaviors and things, even if now, you know, I understand why I did what I did, or I understand not just my own actions, but the things happening inside around me in my life. I've made amends. If I've made amends to people, um, it's still really hard to sometimes sit with those choices and those actions that have caused harm.
Mm. And thanks for sharing that. Were you about to say something else? No? No,
I
go.
was gonna
Say it.
say hurt feels so much easier to sit with in my body because I'm like, that's your there's like a for me there's like a clear emotional boundary at this point in my life where I'm like, okay, you feel hurt. That's your feelings. Let me understand
Hmm.
why. But when I feel like harm is involved, or like I've played a role in causing harm, um, that that's where I it's like, oh God, like this is hard. This is
Hmm.
hard to sit with.
Yeah. You know, so I'm not a linguistics, like my master's is not in linguistics, right? And I'm, looking at these definitions and, harm is a noun. And then there's like a transitive verb of like harm to damage or injure physically. Whereas hurt, transitive verb is first, is like to inflict with physical pain. And then the intransitive verb is to suffer pain or grief. And so, like, it's interesting
Mm,
again, like how we're looking at it, like you hurt someone, you harmed someone, or I'm feeling harmed, or I'm feeling hurt. Um, but in reality, they're all the same, it's the same, um, it can be the same experience, and people are saying it differently. I
mm,
feel hurt or I feel harmed. I
mhm,
don't know that I could feel, know the difference unless we're talking about, like my bone, like like this hurts, but also I guess I was harmed, but like so I think it's about like the ideas that we have related to it. So and I had to laugh at myself because when I got this dog years ago, and I remember saying to him, bad dog. And Althea goes, he's not a bad dog. He just made bad choices. And I was like, I'm so glad you said that because, like, I always say, like, there's no bad people. And, like, people, I get, but what about that? What about, cool. There's no bad people. There's people who make bad choices. And they may make 100% bad choices, you know,
mhm,
but I think that we need to really look at it's not like you were born bad. The choices that we make are bad. And that gives us more power to change.
mhm,
Because if we're just like, oh, I'm a bad person, I can't change. This is how I am. But if you actually
mhm,
look at it as choices,
mhm.
then there is more possibility that someone could change. And flag, I hold on to this. I'm just like, you could change, and I'm like ready to go. And I stay places way too long because of that. But I'm working on that. But I think that looking at it as choices empowers us to say we can change. And what you said about like I've harmed people, I wrote it down because I immediately was like, I gotta make a t-shirt that says that. Like we have to release the stigma around like I've never done anything bad. Because not only is it bullshit, like, period,
Mm,
but like if we're focusing more on looking good than making good choices,
mm,
then we're not actually going to do the work we need to do. Like, we're not going to be able to come to someone and say, God, I did this really messed up thing. Like, you
right.
mentioned amends, like making amends. Like, what does making amends look like? You know? And if we
Mm,
can't talk about it, because like I'm like I don't want you to say I'm bad. Like I don't want you to tell me I'm a bad, horrible person and tell then we're not ever gonna change. Our society's never gonna get better.
mm. Fuck yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking about a lot of things, but one of the things I'm thinking about is somebody I dated on and off when I was younger, like 18 to 20 maybe or something. And I just like I cheated a lot. I was like, like I was interested in seeming like a good person, so like I put on the good front. I did all the nice things. Um, thought I was being like, you know, a good guy, a good person, whatever. And um, but inside. I wasn't really being totally honest with myself. Um, and I wasn't being honest with like, or holding like care for the impact of my actions on her.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember when you said making amends, it reminded me of this because I remember um, that she agreed eventually to meet up with me and talk. And I remember like just owning all of this stuff, just all the shit that I had done, as well as like at that point to what I could understand, like things that had led me to do that and like where that came from, and not as like an excuse, but just acknowledging like, this is where all that stuff comes from for me. It's like stuff I'm working on, and like, I'm sorry, like you were hurt in this, throughout this, and me
Hmm.
not having done this work yet, but if I hadn't done that work, um, I'm thinking about how I wouldn't have the relationships that I have now, where I can be, as difficult as it even is sometimes, like deeply honest and vulnerable and saying things that are really difficult to say or share. Um, I wouldn't have I just wouldn't have been able to cultivate that within myself, because that process requires doing that inner work, which sometimes has to happen in relationships. Like it's
Hmm.
doing the inner work and also engaging in that process with the people that we're in relationship with, that helps us, yeah, cultivate that. It's like this circulation of love.
Yeah. I really like how you said that happens, has to happen in relationships because, we see a lot like go get healed and then, like go be in a relationship, whatever. And I'm not saying like don't like focus on yourself, see what you want, learn what you want, like man, we can have a whole episode about dating anyway, whatever.
Writing it down.
Writing that down, that's a topic. But we have to practice what we're learning. We have to
Mm-hmm.
practice doing it differently,
Mm-hmm.
which means we do have to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to own our shit. I mean, I have made amends with lots of people that have been like, not whether or not, and this was the hardest part for me, like when people have harmed me, when I feel really harmed by their action, even in abusive dynamics, right? And ready, everyone can be like, "Ugh, we never make amends." And, like I know, and I can admit for years I was in an abusive, mostly mentally abusive relationship, emotionally abusive. And I realized at one point that like his behavior would not change unless he thought he was going to leave, like lose me. And that like I could do the patient thing for a really, really long time and like it wouldn't work. And he'd yell at me and he'd tell me I'm messed up, blah, 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 blah. But the moment I was like, I'm fucking done, like this is over, that he would change like immediately. Like all of a sudden he was capable of remembering and he was sweet and kind, all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to a point, I don't know, we're talking like year 9, where I'm just like, I tried once. I'm just gonna say I'm leaving you because you are gonna be better for 2 weeks, you know? And that was fucked up. Like I can own that, like, unless I meant it, me using that to make him behave was manipulative. And so like I had to own that. Now, making amends isn't always going and having a conversation with somebody, but it's knowing it and knowing that I'm not going to do that in the future,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like knowing like I'm not going to be in a dynamic where like I have to act outside of myself to get what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying it was okay, like I could, go down the road of like narcissist, like there's like all these different like understand reasons why he might have been the way that he was. Um, but it was like it was so much easier than being yelled at and like being,
Mhm.
circled and spiraled at in this way that I was just like, cool. Well, then I'm gonna fucking leave you. And no, wait. I'm a capable human, and that would last until this is like the millennial in me. I think I've said this before, but like I felt it was like this like Buffy Angel moment where like Buffy and Angel were in love. And spoiler alert, if you haven't watched this 1990s show, like the moment that like Buffy and Angel had a sweet romantic night together and they like, made love, he turned into an evil vampire. Like he went from being a good vampire to an evil vampire, and that was like part of the spell, and so she immediately was like, wait, but we've been in love all these years. And now he's like a blood sucking vampire, not a good vampire. And that's what I felt like in my life. I was just like, you're like perfect and amazing and wonderful. In the moment, I'm like, okay, I trust you. I love you. And, right back into like, fuck you, bitch, do it yourself. Like, I'm not going to help you. You should be lucky that, like, and I was like,
Mhm.
wow, like, what is this? So, how did I get there? How did I get there? Oh, yes, I can be manipulative. I have harmed people, and I need to be aware of that and be able to say it out loud in order to change my behavior.
Same. And yes, and I appreciate you landing on that because I was listening to you and I felt myself going, you're like, well, and I need to own that. And I'm like, but you were just trying to survive a
Oh,
situation.
yes,
Like, so like
100%.
I feel that, like,
Yes. And
and though
I'm
you,
not shaming myself.
hmm
I'm not saying I'm
hmm
bad because I did it. Because yes, I survived that situation because of that behavior.
right, right.
Yeah.
And you make the point though that like if we don't though recognize our the ways that we have learned to survive,
Yeah.
we can and likely will repeat those things in our future relationships. And that's part of then how the other thing can happen too, right? Where we can have that healing in relationships. So like, I know for me having also been in relationships that where I was, abused and manipulated and like I still feel like if I get really close to somebody, there's like a level of vulnerability that then I can feel my body kind of freak out where I'm like, whoa, wait. You're getting too close. You're getting too close. Because what if this person, and I'm not even thinking, what if this person uses what I'm saying against me or something, but like my body is having this reaction. And if we're not aware of those things, we will likely, you know, disconnect or not, never really get that level of intimacy or closeness, which can be so fucking powerful and healing. I remember I was, my partner and I were dating like 6 months or something, and we were having this relationship check in, and I had to tell them something that I was so nervous to say that I had to go and cover myself up in order to say it because I was just like, I can't look at you and I can't have you see me. And like, this is just, that's how difficult that was. But
Hmm.
thankfully, they were like, that's fine. You do what you got to do. I just need you to tell me, um, now I've never had to do that again. But thankfully, I was able to. And again, it's just like the ways that we can build more and more intimacy and safety
Hmm.
with others, particularly when we've experienced hurt or harm or neglect,
Hmm.
abuse.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, I can think about how many times I've had to be like, so I know that I did this thing, and the reason was because I, like so things, but it's like we practice, like we practice talking about it, and I have had,
Mm-hmm.
I made a men's conversation, had an immense conversation with someone who to this day is still can be like weird and manipulative, and I've had to like block in the world, but there were things that I owned years ago that I was like, I behaved this way because of this thought, and I wasn't honest with you about this thing. And so I did this, and I know this, and um, and so it's like I kept my side of the street clean, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and how you then go out in the world and continue to whatever, like
Mhm.
You can make your bad choices over there and you're going to stay over there, you know? Um, and I hope that you are loved and cared for and seen by other people that you are in healthy dynamics with. That's how I feel about that. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I think that there's just, hurt, harm, people, people are afraid to admit that they have hurt people or they have harmed people. Um, and because of that, you're not able to look inside and say, can I acknowledge that I did this thing? And do I feel okay about it? Do I want to do it again? Like, because that's the thing. It's like, but
Yeah.
do I want to do it again? If I don't do it again, like if I don't take the time to say, to like reflect on it and to talk with trusted people, I might not get to the place of saying, like, do I want to do it again? I might not even get to the place of saying that behavior harmed people. Like, I might still
Hmm.
be in the like, well, fuck them soft ass people who feel a certain type of way from, like, yeah, reflection.
Um, I'm thinking about how, so the story that I just told, I was actually telling my partner like how I felt about them.
Mhm.
And that was actually the thing that was really hardest for me to say. And it has me thinking about how, as someone who has been hurt by people that I've loved, people who've said they've loved me in
Mhm.
my childhood and people I was in relationships with, it's been harder in my life to be vulnerable and open to love
Mhm.
than it is to even take responsibility for
Mhm.
something that I've done that has hurt somebody. I feel like that has actually been easier. And that it's such a metaphor for how, again, healing relationships can be
Mhm.
if we're able to be vulnerable.
And it's really funny you say that because the thing that I was thinking of was related to that same sort of thing where I was just like, I was like thinking that I might have been in love with you. And so I started acting weird because I like didn't want to be in love with you. And so, and now I just know I'm not, I'm not in love with you. And also I feel like maybe that made me feel weird. And so like, maybe I weirded, it was that same sort of thing. Um, where I had to own like, I made shit weird because like didn't want to be in that place. And so like all of a sudden I was like, oh, what does this mean? And why are you talking to me like this? And like, and I had to like acknowledge that and that was like weird and embarrassing, and vulnerable and um why I won't talk to my gym crush. Because I have been hurt so many times before. Gym crush, if you're watching this, come say hi to me. No. No, but it is. It is very true. There's a lot to, being vulnerable in general, um, when you've been hurt. It's a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Any final thoughts?
I was thinking the same thing, but I didn't want to say it. Um, I'm actually really excited to make sure to say I've harmed people. And I think there's got to be something else that's, like underneath it that's like, and I'm trying to do better, something, but I think that like we've got to release the
Mm-hmm.
stigma.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I'm not perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yes. A really like a saying that my partner and used to say a lot in our relationship. We still do, but we need it less. Is like I don't have to be perfect to be loved.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
mic drop.
Mm.
Thanks for tuning in to Circulating Love.
Yeah.